The biggest national agenda of Park Geun-hye's government is creative economy. How much has it achieved in the past year? South Korea's economy suffered substantially in 2013, hit by domestic and overseas issues. How has the government been dealing with these issues? An era when people can get guidance on shop location and even shopping information. We will introduce the indoor navigation technology that continues to evolve. Bohae's bokbunjaju, or raspberry wine, made with an authentic wine fermentation method. What is its secret to being recognized as South Korea's representative brewery? The 2-year-old regime of Kim Jong-un. How has the power surrounding Kim reshuffled?
Hello, I'm Andrew Salmon and welcome to Bizline. Now, we're closing the door on 2013, but we're standing on the threshold of 2014. How was last year for South Korea's economy, and how does next year look? We'll be finding out. We'll also be looking at some navigation technologies that might just help you escape the shopping mall during the January sales. And because it's the festive season, we'll also be toasting in the new year with some berry-flavoured booze that's delighting drinkers overseas. So do stay with us. But before we go to those and other features, let's first take a look at all the breaking business and economic news hitting headlines across South Korea this week.
Korea's labor productivity index rose by nearly 3 percentage points in the third quarter this year to 98.1%. The index indicates the amount of goods or services a worker produces in a given amount of time. More than 400,000 new jobs are expected to be created in Korea next year. The Korea Employment Information Service predicted an economic growth rate of 3.8% for 2014 and a total employment rate of nearly 60%. That would be a rise of 0.3 percentage points from this year. The total debt of Korea's 9 major state-owned companies has surged by nearly $17 billion over the first 6 months of this year. Analysts say it's highly likely the debt level of these 9 companies in 2013 will exceed that of last year, despite government efforts to rein in public debt.
It's been almost a year now since the Park Geun-hye administration put the creative economy at the core of its national agenda. But has a creative economy actually transpired in South Korea, or is this just a vague term which can cover almost anything? Let's take a look.
It has been a year since President Park Geun-hye was elected to take the post in South Korea. And for the year of 2013, the creative economy was the most talked about topic in the country. Creative economy is the core strategy in economic revival, which is on top of the list of key state policy agenda set by the Park Geun-hye administration. The main idea is realizing creativity-led industry by bringing together people's idea and creativity with science and information technologies.
지금까지 우리 경제는 주로 노동이나 자본과 같은 생산 요소의 양적인 투입 증대를 통해 성장해왔지만 인구 고령화 등으로 앞으로는 이와 같은 양적인 투입 증가를 통한 성장이 불가능한 상황입니다. 앞으로도 경제가 계속 발전하려면 이제부터는 앞서 선진국들이 개발해내지 못했던 것을 새로이 개발해낼 수 있어야만 됩니다. 이를 위해서는 창조의 힘을 바탕으로 한 경제를 이루어야만 합니다.
In June, the government announced that it unveiled 6 strategic plans to turn Korea into a creative economy centered on science and information technologies, as well as small and medium-sized enterprises. The government opened sites, online and off, to assist people come up with creative and innovative ideas, such as the Creative Economy Town, where people can suggest their ideas and obtain information on patents and rights protection. Visitors can also seek mentors to help them in realizing their ideas, from prototype to the actual product. So Jae-ho is a university student who came up with an easy-to-clean rain gutter based on his experience gained while serving in the military. He found that the existing gutters were difficult to clean, so he decided to make a convenient product.
좀 더 구체화시켜주고 시제품을 개발해주기도 한다고 해서 이러한 저가 이걸 뭐 창업하기보다는 좀 더 코멘트를 받거나 멘토링을 받고 싶은 마음에 내게 됐었죠.
Recently, there was an exhibition to display products created at the Creative Economy Town. The exhibition explained how a creative idea develops into a product of value. But more than that, it was a place to encourage people to exercise their creativity on industrial sites.
국민 누구나가 나도 아이디어를 내서 제품화를 시키고 산업화를 시킬 수 있다라는 자신감을 드릴 수 있도록 특별히 기획되었습니다.
But because entrepreneurship plays a main role in the creative economy, the government increased its support in the small and medium-sized enterprises. It aims to settle in a cycle of growth, collect, reinvest, retry, an ecosystem that supports entrepreneurship. IMT Korea is a startup launched in May. It started with a new type of syringe that supplements shortcomings in disposable syringes. Small and Medium Business Corporation is the educational ground where people, young and old, exercise their innovative ideas and entrepreneurship.
포기하기는 아깝고 그래서 계속 또 하기에는 또 현실적으로 애로사항이 있고 그래서 어떻게 좀 이렇게 사무실이나 개발 자금이나 이렇게 할 수 있는 곳이 없을까 지원해 주는 곳이 없을까 해서 저희가 지원을 하게 돼서 또 좋게 평가를 받아서 자금도 교육도 그리고 뭐 기타 여러 가지 뭐 서포트를 받아서 현재 여기까지 오게 됐습니다.
Moreover, to support growths of SMEs and startups, the Korea Exchange launched a new market, KONEX, or Korea New Exchange, which allows listing of SMEs. Small companies that don't meet the requirements to be listed at the KOSDAQ can list their shares at KONEX for officially recognized trading, enabling them to better deliver funds while investors can recover their money more easily. It has been 6 months since the trading began at KONEX, and there are still concerns over traded volume despite increase in listed shares.
In order for this market to success fundamentally, that we need to have more companies that have great growth potentials, real valuations, and the ability of the market to seek out those companies and fund those markets and nurture those markets with a long-term view.
It has been less than a year since the government announced its grand plan to achieve creative economy, and it is yet early to assess outcome. However, the common voice is that we need innovation as a growth engine, so we shouldn't be too keen on short-term effects. After all, the creative economy is a long-term process.
정부의 역할은 창조 경제를 위한 환경을 만들어주는 데서 멈춰야 됩니다. 구체적인 목표를 가지고 자꾸 가시적인 성과에 집착하면 창조가 이루어지지 않습니다. 창조라는 게 본래 언제 어디서 튀어나올지 모르는 것이거든요.
The government budgeted about $2.4 billion related to the creative economy and declared that it will take a further step to develop the Creative Economy Town and global platform for the creative economy.
금년도에 창조경제 실현 계획이라는 기본 틀을 만들고 그거에 따른 계획들을 하나씩 만들고 법령을 만들었다고 하면 내년에는 이러한 것들이 조금 더 구체화되고 전국의 지방으로 확산될 수 있는 계기가 되는 한 해가 될 것으로 봅니다. 내년도에는 그 창조경제 문화운동이라든지 아니면 창조경제 생태계를 통한 국민의 아이디어가 꽃피울 수 있도록 더 많은 제도 개선 또 민간에서 요구하는 창조경제의 프로젝트를 추진하는 그러한 데 중점을 두도록 하겠습니다.
In 2013, the topic of creative economy brought a fresh breeze of air to the industrial sector. Government efforts to sustain economic revival will continue next year, seasoned with innovative powers stemming from individual people of South Korea.
In 2013, South Korea hosted a new leader in the Blue House. Many doomy expectations did not come to pass, and exports beat external challenges. However, 2013 was a rough and rather bumpy year for the markets, and GDP growth for the year is expected to be subpar by South Korea's historical standards. How then does 2014 look? To answer these and other questions, we have two guests today. From Sukmyeon Women's University, we welcome Dr. Shin Se-dong, and from Yonsei University, we welcome Dr. Lee Do-won. Gentlemen, welcome back to Bizline.
Glad to
Always
be here.
pleasure.
Thank you. Okay, growth for the year looks likely to come in 2.5 to 2.8% this year. Next year, the IMF and the Bank of Korea are looking at about 3.7, 3.8% growth. Why the brighter outlook ahead?
Well, if you look back 2013, the first half was a little sluggish in economic growth and exports, but on the second part of 2013, there's a strong, recovery in domestic demand, especially the consumption, and also the investment in the private side, and also you will see that very rapid growth in exports in some of the months of the second half of the 2013. So I think that's why the government or the public sector is more optimistic about economic growth 2014.
Good. Anything you'd like to add?
The Ministry of Finance has just announced that they actually forecast a better growth rate for next year.
What sort of numbers are they looking at?
Which is 3.9%. That is even better than the previous forecast. So the background behind this rosy forecast is exactly what Professor Shin just mentioned. They expected that the current recovery of domestic consumption and domestic investment will continue over the next year, and moreover, the external economy will continue to recover from the 2008 global financial crisis. And if you combine these two positive effects, definitely we will have a better year next year.
2014,
hopefully.
Let's hope so. Yeah. Let's talk about the big boys and the medium-sized boys, the corporate scene. Samsung has done extremely well this year. It's held its own against Apple in court, rolled out a number of very innovative and well-received new products. But on the other hand, down at the mid-sized chaebols, a lot of them seem to be having problems. On the corporate front, was 2013 a good year for the blue chips?
Well, depending upon which perspective you're looking into, as you said, if you include all those big players in the country, it seems the figure seems to be pretty fine. But if you exclude just two companies, Samsung Electronics and HMC, the total picture, is completely different. The total revenue or profit of the top 200 companies, if you exclude two companies, Samsung and Hyundai, the profit declines by almost 46%. So half of the all profit of the big top 200 companies is coming from two. And also, if you exclude two companies, debt capital ratio is actually worsened between 2000 and 2012. So the Korean economic performance so far, has been just a success story of the two big giants. And other than that, all the companies in the country are doing really bad for the last couple of years.
Exactly. That's why Korean economy is suffering from polarization between these very successful large companies and less successful small and medium-sized companies. And the polarization is taking place not only between these two groups of companies. The polarization between export industry and service industry is deepened as well. And that's exactly why we need more growth next year. If we recover from this slow growth rate, and then we can actually foster more consumption and investment, especially domestic consumption and domestic investment, and that is going to eventually make things a little bit better for the remaining economy.
I take your points about economic polarization, even within the blue chip sector, but nevertheless, we are seeing a record year for exports. But on the other hand, profitability, corporate profitability, as you mentioned, is well down. What's behind this imbalance between increased exports and falling profitability?
Well, the reason for the success of the giant two, I think, are manifold in the sense that major percentage of their operations are global. So they're not affected by the domestic high wages or cost of production. So But the other, smaller giants like smaller jebels or SMEs, even though the global markets are pretty good, the latter part of 2013, the percentage of domestic operations are much higher than those two big giants. So domestic markets are sluggish in the sense that demand has been crippling so far from a couple of years, and investments actually has been in the negative for more than 2 years. So poor investment, poor domestic consumption. That is one of the reasons that the smaller giants are doing poor. And another point is that was recently written in the newspaper that majority of Korean consumers are buying commodities online from outside sources. Many Korean customers are able to approach international internet market. So they are actually import a lot of commodities from outside, which should have been bought in a domestic market. So right. So I think that's going to continue such a way, and if that is true, the domestic demand and domestic players will be more difficult down the road. Yep.
Okay. Natalie?
Well, it is true that we have a record amount of export and record amount of current account surplus, but there are downside behind this export and surplus as well. But if you look at the structure of export, for example, we rely too much on one or two big markets, especially Chinese market. I think that this is an inevitable phenomena for 2012 and 2013, when the rest of the world has suffered from the crisis. However, we really need to diversify more of our export structure next year. And the other downside of the export is that the linkage between the export and domestic job creation and domestic investment has been weakened. And that is really a big concern to the Korean economy, not only in the short term, but also in the long term. And unless we resolve this problem, export would not be the main engine of growth anymore in Korea. And the other downside of the current account surplus is that even though that we will have a big current account surplus this year, that's not exactly a good sign, because we have a surplus not because our export improved competitiveness substantially, but because we reduced imports as we reduce our investment and consumption. That's not exactly good for the future growth.
Okay, there's been a huge amount of talk, and we touched on this a little earlier, on economic democratization, leveling the playing field for smaller players as compared to the big guys. Do you think the government's delivering, and what sort of metrics should we be looking at to assess the effect of these policies?
Well, the new government of Park Geun-hye initially have two pillars of policies. One is economic democratization, and the other one is to achieve creative economy. And out of these two pillars of policies, the main goal is to eventually achieve the employment rate of 70%, which is actually a very ambitious goal, because the current employment rate is slightly over 60%, I think. But the thing is, the implication of this economic democratization so far was not exactly helping to create more employment in our job market. I think there are kinds of side effects that is kinds of not exactly a direct side effect, but kinds of indirect side effect from the democratization policies. Many of these democratization policies inevitably involve regulations. They tend to regulate more heavily on the behavior of large companies. Of course, some of these behaviors used to be unfair, so they try to correct these unfair behaviors. But in the process of this correction, naturally, we will create some regulations, and this will be a new burden to, especially to big companies. And the other side effect is that the original goal of this democratization is to help small and medium-sized companies by correcting the bad behavior of the large companies. However, the goal of helping the small and medium-sized companies is not fully materialized yet.
So you're saying that the key metric to look at is employment numbers, employment
That's
rates.
the eventual goal, yes.
Dr. Shin,
Well,
yourself.
there was an interesting report by Citizens Coalition for Economic Justice about a month ago. The new government announced 18 major agenda about economic democratization, and the report says out of 18, 10 has not been implemented, and 4 actually retreated. So a total of 78% either not implemented or rolled back.
Yeah.
And only 2% has been. Well, this is the report by the quite critical society, coalition for. But I think general feeling in the Korean community is that the government has not been pretty active in implementing the campaign promises. But that put aside, as I mentioned several times, economic democracy is a constitutional concept, and we have to look at the Constitution, what the economic democracy is. Everybody is talking about the Jebel-related or economic justice measure, but under Korean Constitution, economic democratization is talking about the stable growth, equal growth among the regions, and stable basic needs of the people should be supplied, and there should be no abuse of market power, economic power, and every part in the economy should settle the problem peacefully. Those are the main 4 pillars, and whenever I talk about economic democracy, we have to. And one point that I want to mention is the economic democratization is as vague as creative economy. So it is really hard to grasp ideas. Okay, it's really difficult. And the task of the government is to fill that vague concepts into specific policies, and the outcomes should be measured by employment rate or the growth rate or the current account surplus. So all those kind of transcendental kind of concepts should be materialized in economic figures. Right? Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Well, look, you've slammed the government, but let's talk about 2014. What we're looking at, I think, consensus expectations next year are for a better year ahead. What do you think should be the main thrust of government policy next year? What should be the key issues they're focusing on, Dr. Lee?
Well, as we already mentioned in the beginning of the discussion, government actually have rather rosy forecast for next year.
Yeah.
And in order to support this rosy forecast, government has already announced 4 plans to promote investment. But unfortunately, most of these 4 plans that has been already announced are trapped in National Assembly. Even though government set up a couple of good policies to promote entrepreneurships and investment, the National Assembly simply has not passed those bills. So I think in the beginning of next year, I think Korean government really has to push harder to persuade members of the National Assembly to pass these bills. But my concern is the election next year. In the spring next year, we have another election. Under this, under this situation, I'm not quite sure how strong government can do to persuade the National Assembly.
So political deadlock could hamper growth prospects.
Yes, it is not exactly the economic policy, but it's political.
Yeah, understood.
I think the full effect of the weakening yen will materialize during some time in 2014, and that will have a big effect upon the Korean exports, which has been already sluggish, from the latter part of the 2013. So I think the slackening of the export performance is one of the challenges that Korean government has to deal with. And second, I think, is about the political, not about the bottleneck or deadlock in the Congress. I think the political development that has been happening recently is the legitimacy of the government because of some kind of scandals about the national
service,
right, something like that. And there have been many protests and workouts, especially the religious groups challenging the legitimacy of the presidential election last year, and that kind of the movements in the challenge against the Korean government is going to be another challenge for economic recovery of Korean economy. So I think on the first hand, at the export effect of the yen, that's one thing, and another one is a political, not just in the Congress but also in the streets. That worries me very much.
Okay, so next year, serious political issues hanging over the economy, as well as the external factors of the weaker yen, which could hamper South Korean exports. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much indeed for your time. Let's keep our fingers crossed, and let me wish both of you Happy New Year and a Happy Christmas before that.
Okay, very, very good.
Thank you. Let me begin this segment with a frightening and cautionary tale. If you ever visit a certain large shopping mall in southern Seoul, you may see within that mall a strange-looking, very confused-looking old man dressed in rags with a long white beard. Rumour has it he is one of the mall's original designers, and when the mall was completed, he never managed to find his way out. What do you think could have helped this modern-day Robinson Crusoe? I'm sure you're familiar with sat-navs, digital devices in cars that help you navigate from A to B by road. Now, very similar technologies are being employed to help people navigate around buildings. So, if you're like me and you find it difficult to find the toilet, the car park, or even the exit, this kind of technology could come in very handy indeed. Let's take a closer look.
When you enter a destination on your smartphone, a drone will come flying in from somewhere and guide you inside a building. Until now, navigation's only guided you the way to a building. But from now, they will guide you all the way to the door of your destination. From door to door, let's meet the indoor location information technology that is evolving day by day. In a large shopping mall in Seoul, when we download an indoor navigation app InGuide and enter the name of a store, voice support will start to guide the way.
경로 안내를 시작합니다. 잠시 후 오른쪽입니다.
We can find out our horizontal location indoors as well as which floor we are currently on, with an accuracy of about 95%.
건물이 커서 매장을 찾아가는 게 굉장히 힘들었는데 걸어 다니면서도 이런 내비게이션 서비스가 이용이 돼서 매장을 찾아가는데 어려움이 없이 편하게 갈 수 있었습니다.
But how can the location information be recognized indoors, where GPS isn't supported?
무선 인터넷 서비스를 위해서 기설치된 와이파이로부터 AP로부터 와이파이 신호를 받아서 분석해서 위치를 잡고요. 스마트폰의 관성 센서 중에 기업계 센서를 이용하게 되면은 보다 정확한 층 판단을 할 수 있게 됩니다. 더 나아가서는 이제 에스컬레이터를 타고 이동을 한다, 계단으로 이동을 한다, 이런 부분들까지도 파악할 수 있게 됩니다.
In 2010, indoor navigation app MyCoex was commercialized for the first time in the world in COEX Seoul, where the G20 summit was held. Surprisingly, a domestic research team developed the indoor location information technology, recently one of the hottest issues in the ICT industry, for the first time in the world.
와이파이 신호만 사용해서는 시스템이 좀 불안정하고 정확도가 좀 떨어지는 경향이 있습니다. 그래서 최근에는 와이파이 신호뿐만이 아니고 여러 가지 관성 센서, 예를 들면 삼축 가속기 또는 기압계 또는 자이로스코프, 컴퍼스 이런 그 신호들을 같이 사용하는 추세입니다.
Indeed, indoor digital maps must be completed before starting indoor location information services. The government is also moving to create a highly accurate three-dimensional indoor map. If this is completed, we will be able to use 3D indoor navigation service that will guide us exactly to a place indoors or underground. Indeed, the spatial information market has been biased towards the outdoor, but U.S. Market Research Institute Daratech predicts the global indoor spatial information market is to reach 30 trillion won in 2015. Like this, the reason indoor location information service is under the spotlight is not only because of the convenience of navigation service. If a user walks by a certain store, it sends the information on promotional events currently offered by the store and coupons to the user. It also recommends popular stores to the user by analyzing the user's gender and age.
예를 들면 20대 초반의 여성이 우리 그 공간에 들어와서 어떠한 매장들을 방문했고 어떻게 이동했다라는 정보도 파악할 수 있기 때문에 고객 맞춤형 서비스라든지 더 나아가서 CRM을 강화하는 툴로서 이용할 수 있는 그런 장점이 있습니다.
But if you are getting such indoor marketing service, it means your location information is being collected. This is the reason invasion of privacy issue is being discussed as a side effect of indoor navigation.
법적으로는 국내 위치정보보호법이 있습니다. 위치정보보호법에 의해서 위치정보 사업자의 허가를 득해야 이 사업을 할 수 있고요. 내 위치에 근간하고 내 사용 이력이라든지 나의 관심에 근간해서 제공을 해주게 되면 지금 오히려 발생하고 있는 무분별한 그런 스팸성의 정보를 필터링하고 개인한테 맞게 제공해 줄 수 있다는 장점이 더 나올 수 있다고 생각합니다.
Despite the controversies, competition in the indoor location information service is likely to become fiercer.
미국 뉴욕 맨하탄에 어떤 오피스를 찾아간다라고 할 때 한국에서 그 오피스의 위치를 주소를 통해서 입력을 하고 비행기를 타든 또는 차를 타든 또는 그 다른 공공교통을 이용하든 끊김없이 길 안내를 해주는 그런 도어-투-도어 내비게이션이 가능해지는 세상이 올 수 있다고 봅니다. 그런 점에서 볼 때 실내 위치인식, 실내 내비게이션 서비스는 미래에 지금까지는 없었던 매우 유용한 서비스를 제공해 줄 수 있다고 기대하고 있습니다.
A smart evolution of navigation, indoor navigation. There will soon come a day when we can enter the name of a store or room number as a destination.
It's the festive time of year. Lots of friends, lots of parties, and of course lots of glasses being hoisted skyward as we all toast in the new year. In full compliance with this festive and thirsty spirit, Bizline would like to introduce this week's hidden champion. It's a brewery with 60 years of tradition that's currently delighting overseas drinkers with its raspberry-flavoured wine called Park Geun-hye. So chin chin.
The 2005 APEC Summit meeting, the 2007 historic meeting between then South and North Korean leaders, and the 2009 OECD World Forum. These series of events attracted much attention from around the globe. And at every official banquet held at these global events, there was a Korean wine served to the guests, Bokbunjaju, a fruit wine made with Korean black raspberries. Nowadays, there is an increase in people who are opting to drink Bokbunjaju as the wine of their choice to celebrate the coming new year.
연말이라서 가족 모임이 있는데요. 좋은 술을 저희 가족들한테 대접하고 싶어서 복분자주를 구입했어요. 그리고 남자들한테 좋다고 해서 꼭 복분자로 샀어요.
Pokpunjaju is made by one of Korea's oldest distillery, Bohae, boasting 60 years of proud history. With its sweet taste and fragrance, Pokpunja, which is Korean black raspberry in Korean, takes 80% of all fruit wine exported from Korea. Therefore, it is the most favored wine representing Korea. Traditional drink distiller Bohae. It turned to developing fruit wine very early on to introduce Korea's traditional liquor to the world.
창업주이신 고 임광희 회장님께서 세계 여러 곳을 돌아다니시면서 보면 영국에 가면 위스키, 프랑스의 꼬냑 이런 그 나라를 대표하는 술들이 많이 있는데 우리나라는 특별하게 세계에 내놓을 수 있는 전통주가 없다는 것을 늘 안타깝게 생각하시고 우리나라를 대표할 수 있는 전통주가 뭘까 하고 생각하셔서 개발하게 된 것이 매실주이고 그게 발전돼서 복분자주까지 오게 된 것입니다.
Its aim was to produce a wine representing Korea that could also compete with famous wines of other countries. After many years of research, it was able to introduce 복분자주 in 2004, made by using a traditional wine fermentation process.
최적의 발효 온도를 통해 일정하게 유지하는 정통 발효 공법으로 저희 보헤 복분자주의 맛과 향을 결정하는 중요한 요소라 할 수 있겠습니다.
In order to find the perfect yeast for raspberry fermentation, the company tested 200 different types of yeasts. Through continuous testing, it has been able to reenact the best taste in every drop. Furthermore, to prevent oxidation and contamination of microorganisms in 복분자주, it maintains the highest sanitation standards in all of its facilities, including storage and production line.
매일 온도 체크라든지 미생물 오염을 막기 위하여 24시간 관리가 이루어지고 있습니다. 클린 설비에서 생산하므로 보헤 복분자주는 출고 전 제조 공정 마지막까지도 보헤만의 까다로운 과정을 거쳐야 합니다.
People say that water determines how good a drink tastes. Bohae uses natural bedrock water from 253 meters underground to make the best tasting drinks. As such, Bohae strives to be the best in all of its production stages in making 복분자주. Its hard work has paid off and won many awards from renowned wine competitions around the globe.
세계 주류 박람회, 빈 엑스포 등의 출품을 하게 되었고 거기서 좋은 성적을 얻어서 성과를 내게 되면서부터 에이펙을 비롯한 여러 국제 행사들에게 만찬주로 이렇게 선정이 되게 되었습니다. 그래서 이런 것들이 해외 유명 인사들의 입소문을 타고 해외에서 먼저 많은 관심을 가지게 되었고
The world is paying closer attention to 복분자주 these days since research reports shows that it was highly effective in antioxidation and cancer prevention.
고창산 복분자주를 가지고 저희가 실험을 했었는데요. 항산화능에서는 한 1000ppm 정도의 농도에서 76%의 그 활성산소를 제거해주는 그 효과를 보였어요. 그리고 이제 췌장암을 이용한 암세포를 이용한 실험에서는 우리가 그 폴리페놀 성분들이 주종을 이루는 것 같은데 이것들이 그 암세포를 사멸하는데 아주 큰 효과를 보여서 우리의 이제 항산화, 항암 효과에 아주 큰 효과가 있다라고 입증이 되었습니다.
Currently, 복분자주 takes the biggest market share in Korea's fruit wine and has an uncontested top spot in exports, being sold in 20 countries including Japan and South America. Bohae plans to export 복분자주 to France, the country of wine. But before carrying out its goal, the company will need to add a variety to its line of 복분자주's in taste and fragrance.
가장 한국적인 것이 가장 세계적인 것이다라는 말이 있듯이요. 우리 전통을 기반으로 해서 거기에 우리 문화를 입히고 그래서 세계에 우리 문화를 알리는 이런 것을 통해서 우리의 전통과 문화 외에도 우리 한국의 맛 그리고 멋을 세계에 알리는데 일익을 담당해 보고 싶습니다.
Bohae warming up to the world with its 복분자주, a wine made in Korea. With its motto, "The most Korean thing is the most worldwide thing," Bohae will continue to strive to make Korea's traditional spirit the drink of people's choice in every corner of the world.
December 17th marks the second anniversary of the death of Kim Jong-il and also the second anniversary of the accession to the throne of his son, Kim Jong-un. And this means that North Korea's Kim dynasty is now comfortably into its third generation in power. But recently, the execution of Jang Sung-taek, the number 2 man in the regime, is casting a fresh and harsh international spotlight on Pyongyang and its policies. So in our North Korean segment today, we'll be taking a look back at the first 2 years in power of Kim Jong-un.
2 years ago, a young leader of North Korea in his late 20s grabbed the world's attention and brought concerns by officially becoming the third-generation tyrant of the totalitarian socialist state. On December 17th, North Korean state-run TV showed the youngest Kim marching alone to the center of a stage set up for the memorial ceremony of his father, Kim Jong-il. In fact, 4 days before the event, Kim stunned the world with the execution of his uncle, once considered as the country's second most powerful man and a mentor to the youngest Kim. The whereabouts of Jang's wife, who is also Kim's aunt, remain unknown. With the absence of 2 powerful regents to Kim Jong-un, North Korea vowed to unite behind its supreme leader, Kim Jong-un, during the event marking the second anniversary of Kim Jong-il's death.
초기 김정은이 당정군 원로들의 멘토링을 받아 북한을 관리하는 어떤 후계자로서 활약을 했다면 이제는 젊은 엘리트들을 지휘하며 수령으로서 홀로 된 위상을 보이기 위해서 총력을 다하는 모습을 보여주는 어떤 지도자로서의 위상이 높아졌다. 이렇게 볼 수 있습니다.
Kim Jong-un's 2 years in power have been marked by a series of demotions of old supporters, promotions of new faces, and purges of top military and party officials in efforts to consolidate his power under the unitary leadership.
김정일 시대 인물들이 전반적으로 퇴조하고 새로운 인물들로 특히 이제 세대적인 측면에서도 새로운 세대일 뿐만 아니라 또 당을 중심으로 해서 권력 기구들이 좀 재편되는 일련의 흐름들을 보여주지 않았는가 싶은 생각을 합니다.
Out of the 200 major posts in North Korea, around 40 members of the party, 30 members of the government, and 20 members of the military seem to have changed under the youngest Kim's rule.
김정은 나이를 고려했을 때도 젊은 세대의 인사 교체는 필요한 시점입니다. 그러나 이 나이만으로 세대 교체가 이루어지지는 않고요. 김정은 권력 체계에 순응하고 김정은 시대 병진 정책에 핵심적으로 필요한 젊은 세대의 인적 쇄신 작업이 병행되면서 동시에 이런 조직 인사 개편을 통해서 통치 기반을 마련하기 위해서 이러한 세력을 교체하는 것이다. 이렇게 분석할 수 있겠습니다.
During the ceremony marking the second anniversary of Kim Jong-il's death, some changes in the power play after Jang's execution were also noticed. North Korea's military Politburo chief, Park Geun-hye, was seated next to Kim Jong-un, 1 seat closer than at last year's ceremony. Park Bong-ju, the country's premier, and Chief of General Staff Ri Yong-gil were also seated near Kim on the first row on the main stage, indicating their rise in power. Along with the generation change in the North's power structure, the party has emerged as a main decision body under the young Kim's rule. The simultaneous nuclear and economic development policy was adopted during the Workers' Party meeting.
당은 권력을 떠받칠 수 있는 세력들을 포섭하고 유지하고 관리하는 핵심적인 어떤 기구 제도입니다. 그런 점에서 보게 되면 당의 면모를 일신하고 당을 새롭게 정비함으로써 자신의 권력 기반을 사회적으로 또 자신의 그 지지 기반을 확장할 수 있는 세력들을 포섭할 수 있는 굉장히 중요한 어떤 기반을 만들지 않았는가 생각을 합니다.
But the world is now concerned that the young Kim's regime could turn to be more confrontational to the international community, with military hardliners taking power after the execution of Jang, who was considered a moderate. Kim Jong-un has already proved he is more provocative and unpredictable than his father by carrying out missile tests and a third nuclear test.
향후 이제 장성택 권력 교체, 장성택 숙청, 그리고 그에 따른 세력 교체 이런 여파들이 상대적으로 핵무력 건설에 대한 자주와 존엄 성군에 대한 강조겠죠. 이런 목소리들을 키울 가능성이 높은데 그렇게 본다라고 하면 경제에 대한 기존의 어떤 대외 협력 틀은 유지하겠지만 상대적으로 좀 강경한 목소리들이 대외적으로 표출되고 보수적이고 강경한 목소리들이 커질 경우에 대남 관계에서도 긴장이라든가 이런 것들이 좀 고조될 가능성 이런 것들이 좀 우려되기도 합니다.
The youngest Kim has already demonstrated his will to consolidate his power through a sustained reign of terror, a tactic that was used by his father Kim Jong-il and grandfather Kim Il-sung. But such a tactic could cause not only government officials but also the general public to harbour animosity against the regime.
단기간은 김정은이 원하는 방식대로 권력층과 주민들을 통제하는 좋은 도구가 될 텐데 이게 장기적으로는 오히려 부메랑이 돼서 돌아올 수도 있는데 그때는 사실상 방법이 별로 없어요. 대처할 수 있는 방법이. 그러니까 공포감을 더 조장을 하거나 근데 더 어떻게. 그러니까 그런 면에서 한계가 있다라고 생각을 하는 거죠.
With his influential mentor gone, Kim Jong-un may have a chance to grab the power more firmly under his unitary leadership. But at the same time, possible power struggles behind the scenes could weaken his leadership, raising instability and tensions on the Korean peninsula.
오로지 김정은 어깨 위에 짐이 딱 얹혀졌어요. 김정은의 입장을 생각해 보면 잠이 안 올 것 같아요. 그러니까 이 사람들을 어떻게 먹여 살릴 것인가. 근데 그것도 나를 두려워하고 존경하게 하면서 어떻게 먹여 살릴 것인가.
내부적으로는 군사적인 모습을 강조하면서 유일 영도 체계를 강화하고요. 또 이에 따른 추가적인 숙청과 인사 개편을 지속적으로 단행할 것으로 볼 수 있습니다. 따라서 오히려 체제가 공고해졌다는 것을 대내외적으로는 또 증명해 보이기 위해서 외교나 경제 면에 있어서는 오히려 조금 더 유화된 태도를 보일 가능성도 있다고 전망합니다.
Now entering his third year in power, Kim Jong-un should realize that he will isolate his nation further with a sustained reign of terror and nuclear ambitions. The world remains wary of potential instability of North Korea's leadership that could increase volatility, unexpected provocative acts, or the implosion of a regime possessing nuclear weapons.
And that's all we have time for this week and indeed this year. But do join us next week or next year. We'll be forecasting the global trade outlook and looking at some of the ICT expected to come into the spotlight in 2014. But that's all we have time for right now. Thanks for watching the show this year. I'm Andrew Salmon. This was Bizline. That was 2013. Happy New Year. God bless and goodbye.